Hello and welcome to MalMakes. Today we're doing a painting based on Street Fighter. This is the full version. If you're interested in the time-lapse, you can click on the card here. Otherwise, let's get started. So I wanted to paint Suzaku Castle for a while, and it's been on my list ever since I started looking at Smash stages. And it's actually been requested by a few different people over the years I've been painting. And I really like how pretty it is, and I liked how pretty it was in Smash Brothers, and then I started to look at how it's been portrayed in the different Street Fighter games, and it's especially pretty in the Street Fighter V version. So that's kind of where I've pulled my inspiration from to bring kind of those colors and the layout of that to my painting. So what I need to do first is paint my sky, and the sky goes from orange at the bottom to blue at the top. And those are complementary colors, and when you mix them together, they make kind of like a brown muddy color. And I don't want that for my nice saturated sky. So instead of mixing my complementary colors, I need to kind of make it analogous and force it around the color wheel instead of straight through the middle. That way I'll go from orange into red, into purple, and then into blue at the very top. So I'll do that all the way up here on the canvas. So what I need to do first is figure out exactly how much space is going to be covered up by all of the buildings down here, kind of draw myself a line to figure out where that's going to go, and then mix up all of my sky colors and start to paint that gradient. So I've mixed up my colors, and I'm starting with kind of this light orangey color and then going into gold and then into a red-orange, red-violet, blue-violet, and a blue, and I also have a dark blue for the very top. Now I find that I need to start with my lightest color and then work towards my darkest color, otherwise it kind of makes my lighter colors a bit more dingy because I'm using the same brush for the entire thing. So I'm starting here and then working my way all the way to this one. My canvas is dry and I don't like how it looks. The yellow is too yellow and needs to be more orange, my warm colors go too far up the horizon, and my cool colors are too dark. They look like black paint. You can't even tell that this is violet and this is blue. I'm going to fix up all of those colors on a new palette just to make sure they're right, and then repaint my gradient. Now when you're fixing a gradient like this, the second one is always going to be a lot easier because you don't have to worry about all of the little pieces of canvas showing through. You kind of have like a primer on your canvas of the color it's sort of going to be, so it'll help you out on the second time you do a gradient. When I was drawing my sketch, I was focused on trying to make it more like the game instead of kind of making a aesthetic, harmonious composition on the ratio I have on my canvas. Now my canvas is definitely a different size than the game is, so I need to kind of make that look good on the space that I have. So my sketch is more close to the game and how the game would look, just kind of cropped in to fit a little bit. So I need to kind of move some of these elements around just a little bit so I can make it look nice on the space that I have to work with. So basically these things are going to kind of get pulled a little bit, and these ones are going to get pulled a little bit, so the moon can kind of go down and sit on the third intersection on the top right corner. I like to kind of use the rule of thirds to make things look nice compositionally. So for example, if I split this up into thirds this way, the moon is going to sit right on that line, and if I split it in thirds this way, it'll sit right on this top line here. So it's easy to figure out exactly where that's going to be here on my canvas, and I can just center my circle on that spot. And then I'm just going to use a compass to make sure I have a perfect circle with the center dot being right on that intersection. I know the placement of everything, and I can start to fill in titanium white for the edges of the clouds that are closest to the moon. And I'm going to be using the heavy body for that because I can make these fuzzy like actual clouds. Now for the moon, I'm going to be using a liquid titanium white because it'll give me a sharper line on the edge of the moon. Once it's done with the liquid titanium white, if I want another coat, I can keep using more liquid or the heavy body, but I really need that sharp edge of the moon to make it stand out. I really like making clouds like this. I think it's one of the easier ways to do so, where you keep around old synthetic paintbrushes that are kind of worn down and not good for painting anything else. Or you can use a bristle brush like this one that I use for some of the bigger clouds on other paintings. And you can just use these little fluffy brushes to tap in these fluffy clouds, and I think it works really well and it's really simple. Now I have the white color closest to the moon because that's what's getting lit up by that, and then it's just going to kind of reverse my sky colors inside of the cloud. So where the yellow is at the bottom of the sky, it's going to kind of be at the top of the cloud, or in this case on the right side of the cloud, inside of that first layer of white. And I'm going to tap in the yellow next, and then I'll go into the orange, and then the red, and then maybe into a little bit of violet, just to kind of give some of the clouds a shadow on the very bottom side. The moon in the game I think looks really cool, so I was really working hard on it to make sure that it looked right. I wanted to make sure it kind of had this dark side where you could start to see some of the craters and the details of it, and it has this kind of backlit glow from the sunset. So I used lots of grays to kind of figure out exactly how this part went, and I left the edge alone. I just kind of left it white where I had blocked it in. Once I filled in all of the grays and did all of the crater stuff and kind of like the rays that come from the bottom side of it, I took some glazing liquid with kind of like a red-orange color and just laid it there on the edge of the moon so it had kind of that back glow from that. I filled in this crescent with solid titanium white because that part is so bright it's kind of blown out with no detail. But I had to let all of this dry because next I need to add glazing liquid with some white to kind of have a glow around the crescent part of the moon. I couldn't do that until this was dry because I found that if I have glazing liquid with some of my other colors like this orange and I put more glazing liquid, it'll kind of pick up what's there, and I really need to let it dry so it's like stuck to the canvas and isn't going to move around when I do more layers. But I've let that dry really well and it's not tacky anymore. So I'm going to be using some zinc white, which is a transparent white with some glazing liquid, to fill in around this crescent moon. I'm not filling the entire moon circle, just kind of the little crescent here, so that part has the glow on the sky and on the dark part of the moon. I guess it's going to take a few more layers to get the glow of the moon right. Because I need to make sure that glazing liquid isn't picking up the layer before, I need to kind of lay up something down, let it dry, see how it looks, maybe add another one. So this is layer 2 that I have on here right now. So I'm going to let it dry and then I'll go back and keep adding more as I'm working on some other things. In the meantime, I've drawn in some of these lines of the major buildings. I haven't really touched this part yet with the little one in the background, just kind of the main lines of some things. I want to block those in, kind of cement those lines down, and then work solely on the castle part. Fill it in, get all the detail done. Because it is the thing that's furthest back in space, it should be the thing I work on next. But I don't want to lose some of these other lines because they help kind of show me exactly where this is going to be and how big it should be. So what I'm going to do is kind of fill all of these spaces in with a variety of browns. It's the base color for everything, so it's good to lay that down anyway because it'll give me a good base to work from later once I get to that part. I've really struggled with drawing this castle, and I've drawn it a few times and erased it a few times, and it's finally to the point where I like how it looks. So I'm going to cement all of my lines down with a paint marker and then start to work on the small details, maybe painting all of the walls first and then all of the roof tiles, and then maybe some of the other details that are kind of in between those two spaces. Now, Suzaku Castle is based on Matsuei Castle in Japan. They're basically identical. So I've been looking at photographs of the actual castle because it's a lot easier to zoom in on people's photographs instead of like trying to zoom in on a tiny castle in the background of a video game stage. And plus it's in daylight, so you can kind of get a better sense of the detail that's there. But now that I'm happy with it, like I said, I can go ahead and cement all of my lines down, and then I don't have to worry about drawing it ever again. I really enjoy seeing the piece come together. When I have everything just kind of blocked in with some of these solid colors, it kind of starts to look like a finished piece, and I can kind of imagine how it's going to look. But my favorite part is when I start to get the full detail in, like the roof here. That's when I can really see exactly the colors and how it's going to be as a completed piece, because I can kind of picture this everywhere else. Now, I'm trying not to get overwhelmed by thinking about all of the detail I have to do here yet, especially like this piece and this piece over here. There's a lot of little things to make these look good. So mentally, just to kind of focus my attention and work on things, I break the painting down into pieces. I have the sky, I have the moon, the clouds, the castle, this building, this building. But even further than that, when I'm working on something like this castle here, I need to break it down even further. Otherwise, there's so many little pieces to this that it's kind of hard to focus and, work on it because I'm just overwhelmed by the majority of small places. But that's a good thing because there's so many small places, I can just work on one at a time. So the left side of the roof, the face of the roof, the eaves, the walls here. Next, I'm going to be working on this roof line back here and then those walls. And I can keep going piece by piece until the entire castle is done. And before I know it, working piece by piece, all of the building stuff will be done too. Working on the castle has been time-consuming. It's kind of been fun to kind of see it come together piece by piece, but I was looking at it and I didn't feel right about it, like something felt off, and I was looking at the game and I realized that each of the edges of the roofline looked strange to me. So I looked at the original Matsuya Castle that it's based on, and I realized that the roof is kind of like corrugated with all of the clay tiles that the roof is made of. So there's like a negative space where it hits the eave, right there on the roofline. So I added that to my painting to kind of make it look more natural, and I think it really helped kind of bring that part together. Now I'm moving on to this building over here that's a bit closer, and it'll be a lot faster to paint some of these details even if there's more of them because they will be bigger. The back part of this building is next in space, and then the one after that is this one here. So it kind of sits in between the front half and the back half of this building. So I want to get this done before I move on to anything else. Now I've drawn in these circles because there's kind of these log beams that sit here on the face of it, kind of facing the moon this way. So I drew those in and then kind of brought them back in space horizontally. I'm going to fill them in with like kind of my highlights and shadows just to block them in and see where things are. And I can keep mixing in kind of the midtones until I'm happy with how that area looks. I really like how this building has turned out, and I've started to fill in the front part of this building that sits kind of in front of this back roof line. It kind of goes inside both of these areas through this V-shaped opening. Now the white parts are going to be the very, very brightest parts of the roof, and then the black is going to be the deep dark shadows you get kind of at sunset when the moon is rising. But because of that, I've thought of where the moon is and exactly like where the light hits. So it's going to hit the very, very top of this building, and I've made it kind of yellow here on the very top ridge. But because of that, it's going to cast a shadow onto the part that comes down here at an angle, so you can kind of see it's darker in this area. But there's more shading than what I've done here already. Because it's going into this building, this part is blocking some of that moonlight from hitting in here. So I'm using shading gray to fill in some of this area here, and then maybe just darkening this area up a little bit more because it is kind of behind this top ridge, so it's getting a little bit more in shadow than I have it painted already. I'm working on the decorations on this wall or roof line right here to figure out the exact little details of how things are going to be and their placement. I roughly drew everything in with a dark chalk pastel. You can kind of see some of that remaining here on the canvas to figure out how big these shields should be. So I used my compass to draw some concentric circles to kind of figure out like where the different parts of the shield are going to go. And the last thing I have to do is add these dots that go on the inside ring here in a clock circle. So there's one at 12 o'clock, one at 1 o'clock, and one at 2, and it goes all the way around, so there's 12 dots. So I'm using my protractor to figure out exactly where they're going to go and kind of divvying this up like a pie so I can draw those little circles in. So if I line up my protractor right through the center, through my center mark, and then trying to get it like straight up and down, and I've marked in every 30 degrees around the edge of the protractor. And then I'm just going to spin it around and do the same thing over here. And then I can just kind of connect my lines and draw all of those lines through the very center of this circle. With these 12 spokes on my circle, I'm taking my black paint marker and then drawing in the dots, kind of keeping them on each spoke inside of the ring where they're going to go. So I have 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and I'm just blocking these in, so if they're not perfectly circle, it's okay. As I get to the actual color of this part and the detail, I'll be shading them and making them look more round and more spherical. Earlier I talked about how I mentally break down a painting into pieces, so it's not overwhelming to try and draw everything at once and paint everything at once and mix up all my colors at once. So I've done that. I painted this castle and this building and then this building over here, and now I'm painting this highly decorative area here, and I can break that down further. I have the shields, there's some swag here with some like decorations on it, and then there's some various woods through here and then up into this area. So I'm working on all of those, and I'm working on the things that are furthest in the background, just like I always do, because it's easier to kind of paint on top of things instead of butting them up next to each other. So I'm starting down here in this corner because things like this shield definitely sit on top of things like this ridge. And I'm filling it in with some dark gray blue colors and making it look like wood by doing streaks of darker colors going up through that same direction. Next, I'm going to do these yellow pieces that kind of have a stripe here, and then I'll kind of keep working my way forward until I just have these details up here to do. That way I'm not overwhelmed. I'm not mixing up too many blues for colors that are over here while I'm working on colors that are here. So I'm just focusing on this small rectangle of color that I have to fill in with detail and texture. This foreground building right here, this little triangle, has probably taken me the longest out of anything else on the painting, just because there's so much detail here. There's all of these little spaces that have taken forever to paint, but I really like how they look, and my favorite part of it is how the blue in this section echoes the blue in the sky, and there's also some of the browns, like down even to here, that kind of tie the rest of these buildings to that part of the painting. Now, what I have to do next is paint the platform where the fighters would stand on. I've already done the vertical part down here with different browns, just kind of the different browns from these areas, but because I waited till the very end to do this platform, it's really cool because I can just use some painter's tape and put a piece across the bottom here and a piece across the top here to protect the rest of the painting and only leave a gap where I need the paint to go. Just because I have these straight parallel lines here, it makes it really easy to tape off and fill everything in. These boards were filled in with the same color that kind of was in this area here of the painting. Some of these same golden colors that I had in other places, it kind of brings that to the foreground. Now I did the top part and I did the vertical part. The top part I obviously did the taping and kind of blocked that off, but I brought all of these vanishing point lines all to one vanishing point right above this little archway. Anywhere in this area probably would have been fine, but that kind of stuck out to me and it would help me remember where I put it in case I erased it. So after I kind of had all of those lines going there, I could start to bring in some of the darker colors from these areas to bring in more of a wood grain texture. And then I worked into the lighter colors that I had used in the background here, more so in this area to bring in the wood grain texture there, keeping the lightest area below the moon because that's going to cast the brightest light onto that space. I can't really do the sign yet because I want this to dry, so I'm going to work more in the sky because I kind of forgot something on purpose. I knew I would do it later, just to kind of round the entire painting out. So when I look at the painting right now, I feel like I'm missing something up here. It really needs like some stars or just some small points of light to kind of bring that area together because it looks pretty blank. I could, crop the painting down and it would still look nice. So those stars will just kind of complete this area and make it an entire canvas of a painting. The very last thing to do is the sign on the platform. Originally I had sketched it on the very left side of the painting on my sketch, but once I got to this point I wasn't sure if I wanted it over there with all of the detail that's already over in that area. I kind of liked the idea of putting it over here on the right, but I was concerned kind of about the browns and getting confused with the rest of the browns in that area, so I made myself a paper copy and I could put tape on the back so I can tape it in areas and see how it looks. So if I put it over here, you can see that it kind of does get confused with the other browns in that area, and I don't want it to get lost. So I don't really like it over there now that I can see how it would look, but I can just move this and see how I like it in other places. Right here, I think it gets really lost with all of the detail that's around this area, so I really don't like it there either. I think it would look very strange central because it's kind of bringing too much attention to it, and that's not really the focus of where the painting should be, so I think it's just kind of bringing too much attention to itself. I think it does work best over here where I had originally sketched it, and I think that's where it's going to go. That way it's not really competing with the castle or some of this detail here or the moon, and it's not getting lost with the brown in this area. So I'm going to draw it with pencil, fill it in with white paint marker, start to do the wood, and then do the paper on top. And we're done! We have Suzaku Castle from Street Fighter V. If you're interested in this piece, you could buy a poster or a phone case, or bid on this original canvas. There's links down below. Also, consider supporting me on Patreon. You can find out more at supportmal.com. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of MalMakes, and I'll see you again here for another video game painting.